What is up, gentlemen? It is your boy Niner Sickness with the Niner Sickness podcast. Welcome, everyone. We have two special guests tonight with me. We're going to be breaking down the 49ers 53-man roster. We're going to talk a little bit about the quarterback situation. And I'm going to get their opinions on what they think about the quarterback. We're going to freestyle it tonight, so just kick back, grab your favorite beverage, put your feet up on the couch, and enjoy the podcast right after this.
Roll up to the party, 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 roll up to the party.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Real quick, before we get started, make sure to wipe your feet before entering and smash that like button for your boy Niner Sickness. Show the channel some love. How's everybody doing? Oh my goodness, so much to talk about. There's so much to talk about that I don't want to do it on my own, so that's why I brought two great guests with me to talk 49er football. I just want to say welcome, Mariah from 49 Faithful League. We got Roberto Hastings in the house. What's up? How you doing, sir? People are going to start trickling in. We got Jay Evans. What's up, Jay Evans? Welcome. Welcome to the show. How are you guys doing today? Welcome, welcome. Well, no further ado, let me go ahead and bring in my two guests. You guys seen enough of me. You guys are here to see the true man of the hour. So let me bring my two guests with me. With no further ado, we have Damian Johnson and Chris Polo. What's up, gentlemen?
What's going on?
Hold on, Polo. I'm sorry, Chris. There you go. Damian, sorry about that. There you go. I think we should be able to hear you now.
Yes, sir. There we go. We got it. It.
Can we all see each other?
I got you on another screen, so yeah, I can see it.
I have you on the screen too, so I can see
on
it.
YouTube, I can see it. On this, I can't, but it's all gravy. As long
Well,
as
that's
I can
something.
hear, it's all that matters.
Something I'm gonna have to fix. Okay. I just updated it too, so probably the software. Chris, welcome to the show. So there's so much to unpack tonight in tonight's show. We finally got the 53-man roster. I think it's pretty much set. We got the practice squad pretty much filled. I believe there's two spots now that we brought back the old faithful Dante Johnson back to the squad, to the practice squad. I knew he was coming back. 2014, he's been doing the same thing, so I know they were bringing him back. But there's some notable names on that practice squad that I did not expect to come back, and I'm glad they were back. So I'm going to go ahead and start real quick with Chris. Chris, before we get started in the show, let everyone know watching how they can reach you and your show and how they can follow you, my friend.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. So if you go on Twitter, that's where most of my stuff is at. So it's just Chris Polo with 2 underscores at the end. My link tree's in there to my YouTube channel. I'm going to start doing live shows pretty soon, hopefully once I have everything in order. I'm also the host for the Niners Empire podcast at Stadium Rant. I write articles there as well. I'm a managing editor. So you can find all my stuff in my link tree and my Twitter bio at Chris Polo _.
Perfect. Thank you. And Damien, how can people reach you, my friend?
Everybody can check me out here on YouTube, Niner Gang Podcast. Definitely look that up. The number 9 ERGANG podcast. You can catch me on Apple's, anywhere you get your podcast, man. Just type in Niner Gang Podcast, and I'm there. I will be glad to continue to keep bringing you guys content, man, throughout the year. But on Twitter, you can find me at SwiftD. That's SWIFTDEE. And then on Instagram, 49er _Dion.
There you go. Let's see here. Roberta, what's up, Roberta? How you doing? Thank you for hitting that like button for me. Give me a second. Let me make this a little bit bigger. There we go. So, Dion and Chris, are you guys excited about this 53-man roster? How are you guys feeling about the 53-man roster? We'll get to the quarterback a little bit towards the middle of the show. So I'm going to go with you, Dion, real quick. What are your thoughts of this roster so far, my friend?
The roster turned out the way I pretty much thought it would be. I honestly thought we were probably going to keep at least 6 receivers, though we kept 5. But the 5 is the usual suspects. It's pretty much who we thought would be. The 5 in Jennings, Ayuk, Debo, Gray, and McLeod. So, the rest of the roster, it looks pretty good. You know what I'm saying? So, hopefully the rotations are good enough to keep everybody healthy and give everybody the proper breaks they need. Backup D-line is awesome as always. So,
yeah,
things just take time. But I like what the roster is shaped out to be as far as the whole 53, outside of one specific person. But we'll talk about that later.
Right on, Dion. And what about you, Chris? What are your thoughts, first impressions of the roster so far?
I love the roster. I think it's one of the deepest rosters that I've ever seen for this Niner team. I know we have a tough schedule, but this defense, like on paper, that's a number 1 defense on paper at least. The defensive line is so deep. I think it's the most versatile in the league. The linebacking core is the best linebacking core in the league. And the corners, too, because last year you look at how well the defense was able to finish out. And they played such a big chunk of the year with Josh Norman starting at corner. Now they have Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley. I love Womack at the nickel. And even safety, like I know that people wanted Tart to stay, but I really have good hopes for Talanoa Hufanga stepping in there. I know Jimmy Ward's out for a little bit, but we know what he is when he is there. Then the offense. My only concern on the offense is just the line. That's really it. And it's mostly actually, I know a lot of people say like the interior, but to me, mostly worried about the right tackle spot just because of Mike McGlinchey's health. The one part where I was pretty surprised was Kamoko Toure not making it, but I was even more surprised that he actually came back on the practice squad. So I feel like they kind of prearranged something there. I expect him to not stay on the practice squad because that's a proven edge rusher, so I feel like he'll be back on the team. But, I love the roster.
Yeah, it's a great roster, and you're right. I think this is one of the greatest rosters we had, even better than 2019, especially in the defensive side. I know we lost someone like DeForest Buckner, but if Javon Kinlaw, and I hate comparisons, so I'm not comparing those two players to each other, but if we can get the productiveness from Javon Kinlaw, I think we will, for the most part, blocking, defending the run game, stopping the run, I think we'll be great defensively. And one of the areas we lacked mightily last year was our corners. We had Josh Norman coming from the streets, holding everybody back there. Now with Mooney coming over from Kansas City and having Emmanuel Mosley, and then having the luxury of having Jason Verrett on the PUP, not having to worry about bringing him back right away towards later on. It's going to help that defensive line even more. I mean, they were already great last year. Imagine now with corners be able to step up with the receivers and keep up and press the receivers. That quarterback's going to have to hold the ball a little bit longer, and if he does, that's just food for our D linemen, man. So I'm excited. And you mentioned Toure, Chris, and that was one of my favorite players. Him and Malik Turner were two of the guys that I did not want to see cut. They were, and fortunately for us, they were able to brought back. How much do you think Toure plays this year, Dion? Do you think he gets to play a lot, or do you think he'll just ride that practice squad for most of the year?
You said who specifically?
Toure, Kamiko Toure.
Oh, Kamoko Toure.
Toure.
I think honestly, it all depends on what they feel is best. I mean, I'm not even gonna lie to you. It's a situation where with Kamoko Ture, the D line is so deep, and Chris Kasarik works so well with these defensive linemen that he coaches them up the right way to be able to get the best out of every last one of them. So, I mean, God forbid an injury happens to someone who's on the active roster, but if there is someone that is on the active roster that does get injured, he could wind up in a situation where he can be called up pretty quickly, pretty easily. I'm actually very surprised with this preseason play that he wound up on the practice squad. But what I will say is I do believe that if there is an injury, they most likely will give him a call and see what's going on to be able to bring him up and let him play. Other than that, I do see that he stays on the practice squad for pretty much most of the year, barring such.
Cool. And then for you, Chris, on Malik Turner, I know we got the 5 receivers that we're probably going to be using quite a bit. Do you think he breaks that receiving core, or do you think he'll be mainly on the practice squad if he's called? Special teams, if he's called from practice squad?
I think it really depends. I like Malik Turner as a receiver. I like the way that he can get yards after the catch. When we made that signing and I was looking at the film on him, I was like, this makes total sense in the Shanahan offense that wants to get those yards after the catch. So I feel like if he's brought up to the team, he'll be used at receiver. It's probably going to be mainly a depth piece if someone were to get hurt, just because injuries do happen. When I was watching him in preseason, I was like, this dude seems like he could be someone more than just a special teams guy. When it comes to the receivers, I feel like what's pretty surprising is Danny Gray, when he was picked, I think that a lot of us might have just in our heads penciled him as like the 5th receiver because of Juwan Jennings last year, and also we signed Ray in free agency. But the way I see it right now is like Juwan Jennings to me is like when they need a really physical group of guys out there, someone who can really block, that's Juwan Jennings, or maybe if it's like the red zone. But if they're trying to stretch the field and spread out the whole offense, I think that Danny Gray gets in there as basically a wide receiver 3 throughout the whole year just because of his speed. And I think that Malik Turner can give you some of that explosiveness on offense. So if he's up there on the actual 53-man, I'd like to actually see him use that receiver instead of just sash for special teams, because I know Ray like it's got some people excited. But I don't know. I just feel like that the way he runs after the catch, and you see it when he was playing, it's just a little different. Like it's really spontaneous. I love that kind of aspect. It's kind of like, I'm not going to say it's as good as Devo, but it's that same type of, like, this guy gets the ball and you know he's going to find a way to get another 10 yards. I think that'd be really beneficial for them to have instead of just using them to, like, go tackle somebody on special teams. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'd like to see him used as a receiver. I
agree. I think he brings a lot of things to the offense. And this offense is going to be explosive. Again, that depends on that offensive line, how the right side, particularly with the health of McClinchy, if he was 100% healthy, I would be a little bit more comfortable. I know this is offensive line is designed to run more than it is to pass, so Kyle can call up schemes to protect those offensive linemen, but you can't protect someone from being hurt. You can only protect them from the pass rushers that are coming at them. And scheme to make them better. Let me ask you, out of all the players that are on this roster, which one player do you look, other than Trey, because I know Trey's obvious, but do you think is going to have a greatest impact on this team in this year?
It's Brandon Ayuk. He's going to be the person, reaping the benefits of that offseason work that he put in with Trey. So for me, I respect what Debo did. I don't give him any crap for the way he moved. That's the way these young kids move today. Everything is social media and all that stuff. And, if I don't like you, I'll scrub the account and unfollow you and all this other stuff. So I don't pay any attention to the stuff that these young kids do. It is what it is. It didn't bother me not one bit. So the crazy thing is, he didn't work out with Trey. He kept telling Trey to come to him versus going to Trey. So the continuity between Debo and Trey has to be built, and that will take time. But the thing is, if I get in a pinch, I'm definitely going to IU. Why? Because I have a rapport built with him. I'm going to Jennings. He worked out with me. I'm going to McLeod. He worked out with me. So while Debo was in holdout mode and trying to stay in shape and stay fit enough, at the end of the day, if you would have went and just worked out with him, then you would have built that rapport, and it's easier for him to hit you on different things because the rapport between a quarterback and a center is paramount to success. But the rapport between a quarterback and receiver is even more paramount to their success because you have to know when he runs a certain route, when is he breaking, when is he coming back, what is he doing. Once you have that consistency and that continuity built, then it makes it easier for you to make plays. But if you're just, out there and you're trying to learn it as you go, it does take a little more time. So people may not be as apt to, throw the ball to you because they don't really know what you're going to do. So I honestly think it's going to be Brandon Ayuk. I expect Ayuk to have over 1,000 yards, and I expect him to be in double-digit touchdowns.
Interesting. And I'm going to bring that same question to you, Chris. I want to get your perspective. Do you agree on that particular player, or who's your player that you're looking forward to seeing succeed this year?
Yeah, well, I agree with everything Dion just said because, listen, Brandon Ayuk was in the doghouse last year. We saw, Jimmy could not see this dude when he was wide open. I think Debo is a better player, but I think Brandon Ayuk is safe to say he's our best receiver. But I don't want to go with just the same answer and just completely copy Dion. I actually wrote about this last week. I think Javon Kinlaw is somebody because last few years, we got to see him a little bit. He's played, I think it's a total of 18 games or something like that in his last 2 years. And the thing is, he was always dealing with that lingering knee injury, and it just wasn't going away. And this past offseason this past year when he got the procedure, it was to actually take care of the problem. And his knee I remember Mayoko was basically saying, this is the first year where, Kinlaw can go through his stuff and not have, a swollen knee afterwards. He feels really good right now. So with Kinlaw on the inside, with Armstead now moved inside, with Bosa playing at an all-pro level, even though the voters just don't see it for some reason, and then whoever else is on the other side, I think Kinlaw's going to have a huge year this year, being his first year healthy. I do see him playing a good amount of games this year. I think this is kind of his coming out party for the Niners defense. I think this is the year we probably start to just get over the DeForest Buckner thing and start to see what Kinlaw can do because he's a beast. You can see the videos, just him walking on the field. This dude is a monster. So he's actually going to be out there with all those guys. If you look at the guys that have been able to succeed on this team, if you look at what DJ Jones did, you can look at guys like Arden Key even. Those guys, I love those guys, but let's be real, Javon Kinlaw's a way higher ceiling than that. And I think that this year we finally get to see what that looks like. With, like I said earlier, I think an even more stacked defense than last year. So I think Kinlaw is going to be somebody that really solidifies that front line, even if somebody's out, in my opinion.
I agree. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Kinlaw, man, hey, I'll tell you this. I use him on Madden. Whenever I'm on defense, I play with him. I'm going to tell you right now, bro, I had 24 sacks in my last season that I played.
Wow.
This dude is, I've already built his X factor, everything. He gets off the ball so quick, and he's such a big person. That video that Steph put out, shout out to Steph for putting that video out, man. Jesus Christ, that's a massive human being. Nobody that big should have a 6, almost 8 pack. That's just insane. His level of fitness is just crazy.
If you just remember what Nick Bosa does to open everything up for everyone else, now Kinlaw's in the middle there. So just adding on to that, I think he's going to have a pretty big year.
Yeah, I agree. I hate the comparisons a lot to Debo, DeForest Buckner this, DeForest Buckner that. He came to replace him. Yeah, we traded him away and we picked up Javon, but Javon's his own person, brings his own unique style to this defense. And you're right, Chris. That element of that pain that he was dealing with in his knee was bothering him. It's whenever you have something you can deal with and try to rehab it, and you can try to get your mind off of it. And sometimes you have good days, sometimes you have bad days, and you can try to play around it. But when it's nagging and it's there. And finally, after having the surgery, he said he came on Brad's show, and kudos to Brad for having him on his pod. and he said that he felt like he has a whole new leg, and he feels like a whole new person. And I can imagine with that freedom and having that pain out of his mind, out of sight, out of mind, he's going to be able to do great things this year. And if he steps up as we all think he will, and have the type of season, I mean, this defense on paper, I mean, it is a top 5. It can be arguably a top 2, top 1 easily this year if everything comes together. I wanted to ask you guys, and whoever wants to answer first, it's up to you guys. Special teams is something that we really hurt last year. I mean, we were number 31, right above Green Bay, and lucky for us, the Green Bay was worse, especially last year's playoff game. But our special teams, I mean, we started, field position was terrible. We always started within the closest to our end zone, which opposing offenses were always starting in their 35, 40-yard line, and that was unfair to our defense. With all the players that we brought in to fix that special teams, how good do you think this special teams can be? Could it be a top 10 in your guys' opinion?
I think that, well, top 10, I mean, it's hard to say because I don't know where I would rank them exactly, but it will definitely be much better. I mean, adding Ray McLeod, Oren Burks is a really good special teams player. That's probably like the only good special teams player Green Bay had. George Odom made an all-pro for special teams. So getting 3 guys who will be really valuable, I think, out of the 11 guys that are going to be out there, I think it's going to be good enough to make a really dramatic improvement. I don't know the stat exactly, but I remember seeing like earlier in March or something like that the Niners were something like bottom 10 in starting field position, offense and defense. So adding 3 guys that are really like key special teams contributors, and one of them is a return guy, I think it'll be dramatically better than 31. I mean, it's not also just not saying that much because you can only get that much worse when you're at 31. But out of those guys, I think they'll probably be at least minimum of the pack, or middle of the pack, just at a minimum, like in that 13, 14 range for special teams.
I have to agree with that. I honestly think that that's probably where we'll be, probably middle of the pack. I can't expect us to jump into the top 10 just based on the fact that we are rebuilding our special teams to an extent, bringing in guys that are, special teams aces like Oren Burks and George Odom, bringing in Ray McLeod. Those are nice little plugs to be able to help our special teams be stronger. But I agree with Chris's sentiments. We would probably be about middle of the pack, but we definitely ain't gonna be at 31 again. That much is true.
Oh man, that's music to my ears. Especially with Malik Turner, I love him as a gunner. I mean, this dude is like, he reminds me a lot of you. I don't know if you guys are kind of young, but Spillman, one of the guys who we used to have, reminds me a lot. A lot of people say Raheem Mostert, but I think more of a Spillman type of guy, in my opinion. And I mean, the ball's up in the air. By the time the returner gets the ball, he's right in your face, and I love that about Spillman. So, with all that said, yeah, you're right. It's kind of hard to say a top 10, but definitely not going to be a 31, and that's going to help the defense. I was talking to a Niner fan, and he was like, he didn't understand how much special teams can help a defense and an offense, but mainly a defense, because if you put that defense in a bad situation, when you're giving all the yards on their punt returns, then they have to defend. It's harder to defend. So hopefully this special teams can step up with a new coaching staff. Looking forward to that. Let me ask you, Chris, and we'll get into a little bit about the whole and get it behind us. The whole Jimmy as the backup to Trey, and I'll get Dion's response from this as well. Do you think this is going to hurt or help the club for this year?
With Jimmy, from like taking a step back and looking at it, I do like that we have a backup quarterback, just like with Jimmy's skill set. No, not that's like being generous, but for a backup, like that's pretty high tier for a backup.
Yeah.
So I like that. I don't like it for Trey. Does that make sense? I like it for the Niners to have that, but I don't.
No,
like
makes perfect sense. I hear, and I understand why.
I don't like the move because of that. Because to me, this is all just, it's a political move. Like, they can try to frame it however they want. Like, oh, this had nothing to do with anything else other than Jimmy's available as a backup quarterback. It's not that. It's, you failed to do what you set out to do, which was, we're going to sit Trey. Okay, you did that. You got to sit. You remained competitive. But a huge part of that was they also wanted to build Jimmy's trade value by playing him. And you get to the end, and listen, people can say, well, he had a shoulder surgery that impacted things. But you also knew that you were going into this year with a guy who's missed 25 games. 23 at the time since 2018. He's now missed 25 since 2018. And he was playing through injury in the playoffs. So you knew you were going into that situation with an injury-prone quarterback where he could get hurt and it would take his trade value. So they knew what they signed up for there. They knew the risk they were taking, and they just overvalue their players. I mean, look at what just happened with Trey Sermon. So now I agree with moving on from Sermon, but the fact that they were in talks with the Eagles for a trade regarding Trey Sermon, why do you waive him if you were in trade talks? That team's obviously going to put in a claim for him. He's not going to clear waivers. You're talking to a team about trading, making a trade with him. So they just show a pattern to overvalue their players, and they're doing it to a point where you can say, okay, Trey has the mental, he has the intangibles, like he's not going to worry about Jimmy, where he's probably confident in himself enough to the point where he's not worried about Jimmy taking his job or anything like that. I'm not worried about it from a Trey standpoint. I think mentally he's got it. I think he fully understands. I think he really does embrace Jimmy because he was the first guy that texted him when he was drafted. My issue is with everywhere in the locker room, because I don't care who was in there. Having that situation where a bunch of those guys in that locker room were loyal to Jimmy for the last handful of years because of what they were able to accomplish together, regardless of how much he chipped in doing that. If Trey struggles a little bit, which he's going to because it's his first year as a starter, he's going to have growing pains. Every interception, every head-scratching throw or whatever, or if they lose a game, there's going to be that tension and there's going to be that awkwardness. And like I said, I don't think it's going to affect Trey, but it will affect the way the team responds to Trey as a leader because they're looking at somebody else. So whenever you have a situation like this, the most popular guy on the team becomes the backup quarterback. It's always the most popular guy on the team, and you don't need that for Trey's development. It's just counterproductive in the transition to making Trey the full leader. You can say it's Trey's team and you've committed to it, but at the end of the day, if they cut him and paid the injury guarantee, the cap space they created would have been pretty similar, and you could have used that to protect Trey and get another tackle or get another center or somebody in free agency. And instead, they're prioritizing a draft pick for next year instead of trying to support their quarterback on his rookie deal, which just doesn't make sense to me, because you can say, all right, we have a good backup, we have a good insurance policy. If your starting quarterback goes down, unless you have a once in a blue moon situation like Nick Foles, your season is done. You're not going to win a Super Bowl if your quarterback goes down. I don't care who your backup is, how good your backup is. No one is sitting there saying, oh, we need the best backup to move the needle. It doesn't do anything. If Trey goes down, you're looking into next year. So I don't really care about the fact that we have the best backup in the league for Trey Lance. It just doesn't make sense to me. But nothing really surprises me about John Lynch and Shanahan at this point because they've proven to be stubborn. They overvalue him. And also, honestly, after this Trey Sermon thing, it really makes me wonder if they got some pretty decent offers from teams for Jimmy throughout the offseason and still declined it, which is pretty ridiculous. There was the rumor that Seattle was interested and they didn't want to trade him within the division. If that's true and they could have made a trade, but they just didn't want him to go to Seattle as if that was going to matter, that's an egregious decision to make.
Yeah, go ahead, Dion.
So, Chris, basically, I need you to get out of my head and stop taking all of my points because you pretty much said everything I was going to say. But let's take a trip. Let's take a little road trip, right? Let's go back to last year, 2021. Trade, the trade is made. Trey Lance is drafted. Everybody says, okay, we got a new quarterback. They said, we called Jimmy, told him about the situation. He wasn't necessarily the happiest, but he was okay with it. Media spins this as, okay, we're going to go ahead and say that Jimmy's the starter. Jimmy is. Kyle commits to that. Doesn't change that stance. Here's the thing. When the season starts, who threw the first touchdown? Trey Lance. And as the season went on, and Kyle wanted to start moving Trey in and out to kind of get him some reps here and there. What did the line do? They came to him. They said, hey, we don't really like this in and out type thing. It's messing with Jimmy's leadership. It's messing with his continuity. He can't get into a rhythm. Don't do it. So what did Kyle do? Kyle said, okay, you guys are telling me what's going on. I got you. But got our ass handed to us versus Green Bay in that first half. And right at the end, who gave us a shot in the arm? It was Trey Lance. The Seattle game where Jimmy was handed the ball 5 times by our defense and did nothing with it and had a phantom calf injury. Who came in and played pretty well? Trey Lance. The Arizona game that I went to, I was physically there, 3rd row on the 30-yard line. So I saw everything. I saw everybody clearly. You decide to dress Travis Benjamin over Jawan Jennings, who built a rapport with Trey Lance, and Travis Benjamin did nothing the whole game.
Yep.
He was basically a decoy. I don't even know why you did that. And then you ran a college-style offense for Lance, so he looked bad. And what happens in that game? He hits his finger on a helmet, doesn't wind up doing too well. Then Jimmy gets injured again, as he's been injured throughout his time as a Niner. So what happens? You throw Trey Lance into the fire against the Texans. First half, not pretty good. Second half, looked a lot better. If Trey doesn't win that game versus Houston, we're not in the playoffs. And then in the playoffs, the last time we saw Jimmy Garoppolo, he was being sacked while throwing an interception. So I say all that to say we come into this year, and what happens? The offseason comes. Jimmy says, I'm going to go and get surgery. I'm about to screw you guys. I'm going to tank my trade value. So let's think about this. You tank your trade value. We can't move you because nobody wants you. On top of that, you're an injury-prone quarterback. On top of that, you basically are worth nothing to a franchise if you can't get in there and just, get out for OTAs, mini camp, training camp, all of that stuff. So instead of John and Kyle saying, why not rework his contract to make it team friendly for another team to go ahead and take him, they wait until August 29th, the day before cuts, to restructure a deal, basically doing the legwork for other teams, because Jimmy was given the opportunity to go ahead and see what options were out there. They told Jimmy and Don Yee, go out there, scour the earth, figure out what you want to do. We're more than happy to go ahead and get you off the books. You can renegotiate your contract, all of that stuff. Still, nobody wanted it. And we come to a point where he's still here. And now they're trying to make it seem like it's the greatest thing on earth. Oh my God, Jimmy's available as a backup quarterback? Oh, that's awesome. We've got to give him money. But you give him $6.5 million. And I think it's, possibly around 8. And then you give him a no trade clause and a no franchise tag clause? I am so sorry. I'm not about to give you no leverage with nothing. You get no control. But the Niners saw fit to do so. Why? For what reason? Let's go into the playoffs. Jimmy's never won us a playoff game, and I dare anyone to prove me wrong. A quarterback with his stats in the playoffs should not be 4-2. He should be 0-6. We ran to the playoffs. The defense did it. The special teams did it. Jimmy's done nothing.
Yeah, Raheem Mostert got us to the playoff.
He got us. Yeah, he got us through that NFC Championship game versus the Green Bay Packers. And I know they don't ever want to see him again because he ran rampant all over their asses.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying. I say all that to say this. Jimmy being here is a headache. And I've addressed this on other shows, and I'll address it here. There are some content creators out there that are perfectly comfortable with Jimmy being here. That's your opinion. That is your right. That's fine. But you know what I've seen? People getting mad at other content creators, telling us that we should feel the same way that they should feel.
No, that's
You know
wrong.
what I say? No, that's not going to happen. You know why? I don't like the fact that 10 is here. I wish he was gone. I wish we traded him. If we were going to pay him 6.5, as Chris eloquently stated, why not just give him the extra $1 million and cut him? What's the significance of keeping him here? Why? Why do you need him? You're really dying that much to get some type of draft pick for him when there's nothing out there. Teams are basically telling you, I don't want the guy. We're going to wait till you cut him. He's not worth it. So you do the legwork for other teams, and now all you're literally banking on is hoping and praying that somebody calls you before the trade deadline, and or you're banking on the fact that another quarterback gets hurt. Which
You muted yourself there, Dion.
my bad. He's a walking distraction. So if anybody watched the press conference today, did Trey get asked any football questions? Did he ask how he feels about being ready for the season? Did he ask about his rapport with the receivers and the line or anything like that? Nope. Every single question was about 10, and it drove me absolutely insane. This is why I don't like our reporters. You guys are so busy enamored with 10 that you're not focusing on 5. Who is the leader? Who is the unquestioned starter? This is coming out of Kyle. This is coming out of John. This was told that it was made clear that he is the guy. There is no turning back. But like Chris alluded to, I don't like this. Why? Because what happens when Trey starts to make mistakes? What happens if there are times in the games where he doesn't look as well? You got 2 things that can hinder that young man's performance. One, the fans and stands. They can start yelling, we want Jimmy.
Yeah.
And 2, the people in the locker room. Though you've made it very clear that it is Trey's team and that is it, what happens when you go to a situation where the players come to you and say, hey, man, Jimmy's here. We were winning with him. Why don't you put him in? The kid's not ready. Let's just, I get it. I understand. But, he's not ready. Are you going to listen to him again? Or are you going to actually, drop your nuts, so to speak, and say, hey, I'm Kyle Shanahan. I'm the head coach. I make the decisions around here. You either rolling with Trey or you not. Because you folded last year when they did that to you. So what makes me think you won't fold again this year? That just him being here is just not fair to Lance. And once again, it's a media firestorm to focus on him. When our games are being commentated on, it's not going to be, damn, look at that bomb that Trey Lance threw. They're going to keep cutting to the sideline to focus on 10. Why? He's a backup. He's nobody.
Yep.
He did nothing. He
Nothing
did
but
just
distraction.
enough.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a constant distraction. And I'm sorry, if I'm Trey, I'll tell you right now, if I'm Trey and I don't look so good, I don't look so hot, and the team goes behind my back, they go to Kyle and mention to him that I shouldn't be the starter, and he actually benches me and puts 10 in, I want out. I don't want to be here. I'm not about to sit up here and deal with that. Y'all not about to turn on me. Y'all roll for this fool who did nothing for you in the playoffs, who gave you absolutely trash. You rode with him through the season when he was the one who put you in a 3 and 5 spot. So you better roll with me through the good, the bad, and the ugly. The same way you went to bat for his ass, you better go to bat for me, and you better ride with me. I can tell you right now, he's got one number 1 supporter, and that's Brandon Ayuk. But 10 being here is a full-on distraction. I hate every second of it. I don't like it, and I never will. And to the other content creators that say the things that they say and tell me that I should feel the way that they feel, You have your opinion. I have mine. I will stick to the fact that I do not like Tim being here. I wanted him gone. I wish he was gone. I don't want him here because of the distraction, and it takes away from us as football. It takes away from the team. What if Fred Warner goes out there and has a game that balls out? What you gonna do? Bring him to the podium and go, "Hey, you had a nice game. How do you feel about Jimmy being here?"
Yeah.
No one cares.
Yeah.
Let's focus on the team, not some backup quarterback that we stupidly paid. That's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I can hear it in your voice of the frustration. A lot of Niner fans follow you that same frustration. Like Chris said earlier, I do understand why. Do I agree with it? No, but do I understand why they did it? Because the roster is a Super Bowl roster and blah blah blah. But again, from a Trey Lance standpoint, what kind of confidence are you giving this young man? Because I'll be honest, if Nate Sudfeld was the backup quarterback and Trey struggled, they will be less hesitant to move on from Trey to Nate than they would from Trey to Jimmy. So they will put up with Trey a little bit longer and give him a chance than they will with Jimmy, because the pressure will be on Kyle. You know, Kyle's looking after his own butt and he wants to win. And at the end of the day, that's all that is about, is winning, no matter who you put under the bus to get there. And unfortunately, that just distract from the team and makes it a circus. Like you said, if Fred Warner has a great game, instead of focusing on what he did, they're gonna go ahead and ask him, well, what are your thoughts about Jimmy? And like you said, who cares? Why would these reporters be talking more about a backup than they are from the present players that are playing? And that's the distraction that we all agree on. Now, from a standpoint where if Trey does get hurt, not struggle but hurt, you bring in Jimmy. Jimmy can win you games, but you know, either you swim or you sink with the guy you're going with. I mean, I understand it's a tricky question because it's a Super Bowl roster. You know, let's say we didn't have Jimmy, and let's say we did go to Nate Sudfeld for 3 or 4 games because Trey got hurt and he lost all those games. Our playoff hopes probably go down the drain compared to Jimmy, but the development of Trey within itself does not. He continued to develop. And you say what you will. They say they like each other, they get along. Of course, what else are you going to say? But Trey understands that there's people in the locker room that like Jimmy. That it's not like Jimmy's only been here a year or 2. He's been here 5 years. There's a relationship between Jimmy and players for outside of football. And if Trey starts to struggle, if the hopes of making the playoffs start to fade away, a lot of these players are going to be talking. Well, you know what? Jimmy should be starting. Because they have that loyalty to Jimmy. And that's where that distraction comes. And like you said, Leon, you don't want to take out Trey and expect Trey to be okay with that. Either you ride with him or you don't. Don't sit there and take him out and then expect him to put him back in. That's just going to mess up his development mentally. This kid is smart. He's beyond his years, and he'll handle himself well. But you don't want to cramp on his style by keeping someone like Jimmy. You know, it's both sides have. I mean, there's valid to both sides. There's content creators there. That Jimmy as a backup, and then there's those that wish that Jimmy wasn't here. And like you said, Dion, everybody is entitled to their own opinion. Like, I'm okay with Jimmy being here as a backup, but not okay for Trey. Kind of like what Chris said earlier. But I'm not going to sit there and tell you, no, Dion, you're wrong, and this is why you're wrong. No, there's really no right or wrong. It's just a matter of opinion. But I do know this. Jimmy being here does and will affect Trey, whether people want to agree with it or not. In a negative way. I don't think so much in a positive way. But Chris looks like he wanted to say a little bit more about this. Let's go ahead, brother.
Yeah, so I just want to address Ramelia Sports Report in the chat. So
Yeah.
there's a couple things in here I got to get to. So the 8-20 whatever record, Kyle doesn't have Jimmy. There's a lot of context that national media leaves out with that. Okay, so first of all, The quarterbacks other than Jimmy that were playing were Brian Hoyer, who didn't win a single game, Nick
Come on now.
Mullins, and C.J. Beathard. Those guys would be extremely lucky to make a 53-man roster. Like, it's one thing to have a backup, like the way that Jacoby Brissett's going to have to fill in for Deshaun Watson when he's suspended. Like, that's a backup. Those guys hope to make a roster in general. They hope to be a third string. Like, we were watching Nick Mullins play in the Hall of Fame game. So if you have a quarterback like that, you're really not going to win games at all. And on top of that, the year of 2020, they had like the second most players on injured reserve in NFL history. So it wasn't even just the quarterback. It was like there was a game against the Packers. It was a primetime game where every single player that touched the football in the NFC Championship game didn't play in that primetime game. I think it was Monday night, including defense. Like Richard Sherman, like for instance, because he intercepted the ball in the championship game. He didn't play. Everyone who touched the ball didn't play. So it was that bad with injuries. So that leaves out a lot of context when national media tries to put that out there, which is really weird that they keep doing that with national media. And he's not looking for Jimmy to, like, save him. What happened is they failed to make a trade, and they don't want to admit that they were wrong and overvalued their guy. Because throughout this whole camp, there's a reason that, first of all, Jimmy said bye to the fans in February, which is crazy. He said bye to the fans in a press conference in February. He knew what was happening. He knew the whole time. Like, they communicated with Jimmy, like, this is what we're going to do. This is what we drafted this kid for. Like, you're going to play this year. We're going to move you next year. And this whole offseason, which they didn't expect to keep him, they didn't give him a playbook. They didn't have him stay for team programs or any practices or anything like that. Jimmy even said himself today to the media he did not expect this to happen. So he's not looking for Jimmy to stay. It was just they were backed into a corner because they made a mistake. Shanahan, John Lynch, they all made a mistake, and they didn't know what to do. I think the conversation probably went something like, listen, there's no way we're going to pay you $25 million or $27 million this year. So either you're going to take a pay cut and we're going to try to trade you, or we're just going to cut you. And you're going to have to hope that you get a salary better than what we can give you somewhere else on the open market because nobody wants you. So it's not that he's coming in to, like, save him or anything like that. This is strictly just the part of the 49ers that I think a lot more fans need to criticize and stop, like, holding John Lynch's water. They make mistakes. Like, the Trey Sermon thing is a mistake, and a lot of people have come at me for that the last few weeks when I was saying that they should probably cut him, and I was basically saying, like, it was kind of a waste. They traded 2 draft picks to get the guy. A year later, they pick a running back in the same round because obviously they felt a way. And I understand they're going to get a running back anyways, but to get one that early, they must have felt a way about Trey Sermon. And he gets beat out the next year after a year of experience by 2 rookies. That was a mistake, and that's why they got rid of him. With Jimmy, they were so stubborn this entire year to get a pick that they were willing to do something this egregious. They've been mismanaging the whole Trey Lance situation. Like last year, what I really hated about last year, it felt like they rarely came out to support Trey while he was sitting through that year. It took until right before camp this year for them to come out and be like, this is Trey's team. We have moved on to Trey. He is our quarterback. Notice how Kyle now feels the need to get out in front of it and be like, Trey is our quarterback. We communicated this to make sure that everyone knows Trey is the starter here. But the media is going to run wild with it, like Dion and Beto, like you guys were saying. Let's say every game that if Trey throws a pick or if we lose a game, the question to Kyle Shanahan immediately is going to be, did you think at any point in the game today to put in Jimmy? Like, that's all it's going to be the entire year. This team could be like 10-2 at a time, and they're still going to be asking about that. So they don't want this. They obviously didn't want it if they didn't give the guy the playbook and they tried to keep him away for this long. If he felt concerned about Trey's inexperience, he would have had Jimmy at practice. He would have had Jimmy out there working with these guys, working with this new offensive line, building chemistry with these new pass catchers. So all that has nothing to do with this. This is simply just the Niners' incompetence in the front office and decision-making, which at times can be bad. They're pretty good at building a roster, but in terms of their own players, they overvalue them. It is what it is.
I appreciate that.
I agree with you real quick. I agree with you, Chris. Like, and that's another thing. Like, the people that I'm talking about that are trying to tell me tell people that they wrong when they don't just roll with what the franchise does, like you get to a certain point and you become a little docile. I don't know why, but I'm gonna keep it a buck no matter what. I don't always agree with the decisions that they make, and Chris outlined in detail some of the dumb things that have happened since they've been here. How do you draft a guy in the third round and cut him the next year when you could have drafted Asante Samuel Jr.? We would have had a marquee defensive back. I'm just saying. So, and the other thing is, I can tell you right now, anytime that Trey is at the podium, they're going to ask him about 10. Here's the thing. As uncomfortable as you saw 10 get about them asking about Lance, it's going to be the same way when they do that. See, Trey is a better guy than me. I'd have came up to the podium and started right off the bat. Jimmy is here. Jimmy is the backup. This is my team. I will not be fielding any questions about our relationship or him being here. If you have football questions, I will gladly answer them. If all of your questions pertain to Jimmy Garoppolo and our relationship, then I have no business at this podium.
Agree.
That's respectful. But what did he do? He sat there, he answered the questions. But you could tell visibly in his body language and the way that he looked when he was answering these questions, he's like, bro, like really, you could ask me about me. You could ask me how my offseason's been. You could ask how the players feel about me, what guys I've built a rapport with, how I feel about the O-line. You could ask me 1,000 questions. But everybody and their mother asks the same stupid question. How do you feel about Tim? How do you feel about Jimmy? What's your relationship? How's things going? Did you talk to him? Have you guys hung out? Did you go play golf or bowl the other day? No one cares.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, like I said, Trey is a nice guy, and he's good. There's no way in hell me being on that team, I would sit there and continue to deal with it. I would tell them straight up, it has been made clear by the front office, by the head coach, this is my team. If you have questions to ask me about my team, go ahead. If you have questions to ask me about my relationship and backup quarterback, I'm sorry, I have no time to answer that. That's what makes sense. Like, him being as good as he is, doing what he did, that's good for the team. But at the end of the day, I can tell you right now, man, you can't tell me that when you looked at last year and watched Jimmy get asked a billion questions about Trey, he didn't get bothered and uncomfortable. His body language spoke volume. And so did Trey's. Like, bro, come on. Ask me something about football. I do not care that he exists. It is what it is. He's here. I got to deal with it. You know, whatever. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to kill the game, and I'm going to show the league that I'm worthy of being a starter. But at the same time, I don't need y'all sitting up here continuing left and right. Oh, well, how do you feel about Jimmy? Is it a bother that he's here? Like, no one cares anymore, bro. He's here. We got to deal with it. Let's move on. But ask me football questions. Stop asking me about someone who's pretty much irrelevant. The only time he's going to be relevant is, God forbid, I get hurt, or, you know, we might even bring him in and kneel down if I'm kicking ass on the field. You know, if we up on a team 42-10 and it's the last, you know, it's the last quarter, you know, he might come in and do a kneel down for me or something. Like, I'm wrong. I would have went up there and been blatant about it. Like, look, obviously this ain't his team no more. And if they would have came to me and been like, yo, you could have been better about that, I would have been like, no, I don't need to be better about it. I need y'all to allow me to have my team instead of me going out answering questions about the backup quarterback, which means nothing.
Exactly. Real quick, Chris, and I'll have you give your point. Right after Chris, I'm going to do a Q&A with all the people in the comments that they're asking questions, and I like to get them involved and just my way of showing appreciation for them watching the show. So go ahead, and I'm going to have you go ahead and say your thing, Chris, and then I'm going to explain how we're going to do the questions and the Q&As right after. Go ahead, Chris.
Yes, I was just going to say, to kind of talk about what Dion talking with Trey talking to people, one of the things that people keep trying to spin is like, well, it's fine, get over it. Trey said he's fine with it and he loves it. Okay, what is a 22-year-old quarterback who's never been an established starter in the NFL supposed to say? Like that, he has no say in their own decision making as a front office or the coaching staff. He doesn't have a say in something like that in terms of what they do with another player. He's not Tom Brady. He's not LeBron James. He does not get to sign off on
keep it 100,
okay,
bro.
Not okay, who we bring in, who we keep out, who we hire, who we fire. Like he is not at that status to even challenge something that the front office wants to do. A very stubborn front office. I'm not saying a bad front office, but a very stubborn front office. Trey Lance has no say in that. He's played 10 quarters of regular season football. He doesn't get to say, oh yeah, no, don't hold him out for a trade for a draft pick. Just cut him. So it's one of the most pointless things. Like, Trey's supposed to agree. Trey's trying to prove his place in the NFL. He's not proven it to the point where he can disagree with decisions like that. And Jimmy was asked, like, how was that communicated? Jimmy and Trey, although it was weird because Trey said they talk all the time. They talk almost every day. But Jimmy said that they didn't talk about this. Like, they didn't talk about it together to work out, like, oh, yeah, like, Trey was okay with it. He said it was communicated through Kyle and John and everyone else. So if they talk every day, like, it's not like these two are saying, like, oh, yeah, I can't wait to have you back on the team, man. Like, they were not doing that. They were not discussing this, according to Jimmy at least, unless he's lying. So I really want people to really just ignore that whole point, because I think a lot of people are trying to do that. The people who really, really love Jimmy are trying to make that point to try to justify it. Dude has no say. He just doesn't.
Absolutely. Appreciate that, Chris and Dion. All right, guys, so we're going to get to the last segment of our show. So I got to let these gentlemen go because I'm feeling bad for Chris. His arm must be hurting holding that mic.
I'm good.
Oh, you're good. Okay, that's youth. Me, on the other hand, I'm already like throwing the towel, bro. Throwing the towel. All right, ladies.
If I was Jimmy G, I would have messed up.
I'm 40. I'm 41, Beto. So I get it, man.
You're young, bro. You're young.
If I was Jimmy, I would have torn a ligament in my elbow by now holding this thing, but thankfully I'm not. So
yeah, I hear you, bro. I would love to be 40. I'd love to be 41 again, bro. Let me tell you. All right, guys. So this is what we're gonna do. I mentioned earlier with the letter Q, but let's go ahead and ask a question, but put a hashtag in front of the question so I can separate from everybody else's comments. Put a hashtag and then your question. And if you're directing it to Dion, mention it to Dion. If you're directing it to Chris, please direct it to Chris. And keep it, a simple question. We're not going to be here all night, and I would like to give a lot of you guys an opportunity to ask questions. So if you have questions for these two gentlemen on my panel tonight, please write it down, put hashtag in front of it, then the question, so that I can bring it up from all the comments that are coming up, separate them, and then I'll be happy to put it on the board so they can read it themselves, or I'll read it to them, and then they can answer it accordingly to your questions. So feel free to do so.
I see a couple of them I can help you with in the chat. Going back, I actually went back and found a few of them. If you want me to help
sure, go for it. So while they're writing the other ones, go for it.
Yeah. So the first question was from Niner Gang 408. Do you feel like Jimmy G will get on the field if Trey doesn't meet Kyle's expectations? Polo, you take that one, man.
No. Look at the leash that they gave Jimmy. Look at the leash they gave Jimmy last year. They're gonna give Trey the same leash, if not longer. So if it's performance, no, because at the end of the day, a quarterback this young, they're going to struggle, and you need them to get the struggles out so they can learn, so they can go back, watch film, and you can show them, like, this is what you did here, but you need to be doing this. You need to make sure you see this. That's how you are going to learn, is just by doing. And with Jimmy last year, they gave him the longest leash as someone very experienced in the system, still making rookie mistakes. So the only way you're going to see Jimmy is if for some reason Trey Lance gets injured and just can't go. Or if he comes in to hand the ball off after we're up 24 points with like 6 minutes left and you just don't want Trey to go out there and just kneeling down. Like, that's the only time you're really going to see Jimmy.
Awesome. Okay, we have a first question from Niner Gang 408 as well. He says, when do we expect to see Jason Verrett back?
I would say that you'll see him after that time frame. I'm pretty sure they just gave him a couple of extra weeks just to get right. Make sure the body feels perfect. As some of us people that are a little bit older say, make sure the ticker's still ticking. You know what I mean? You basically are just giving him a little extra time to get his body right, make sure that knee is right, make sure that ACL is fully healed. And you'll see Jason Verrett, on the field probably, by week 5. I don't doubt it. When he comes back, he just enhances our DB room. Like, it's our DB room this year is disgusting, and I mean that in every good way you can think of. But you'll see him probably about week 5, and you'll start to see him worked in the games. And then once he gets back to full health, like I'm telling you right now, you're going to see us interchange a lot of DBs, and teams aren't going to know how to stop us because we're going to be able to play man, we're going to be able to play zone, we're going to do a lot. So I definitely, and of course with Womack over there in the slot, man, it's going to be a hard time for people to be able to beat us. I do see one from Robert Davis from a little bit earlier. He says, what's up, Beto? Do you think they have enough to cobble together an offensive line? Is there enough talent?
Okay. Sorry, repeat that. Which one was that one again?
Yeah, so this one was Robert Davis. He says, do you think they have enough talent to bring together an offensive line? Is there enough talent?
That's a good question. Having Trent Williams on that offensive left side, the big silverback, is always encouraging for me. But Aaron Banks is, as good as he may be, he's a question mark. Jake Brundle, he is a vet, but not really a proven vet per se at center, so that's a question mark. And then even though Spencer Burford has been looking very good in camp and in preseason, at the end of the day, he's still a rookie. And rookies are going to make those mistakes right in those moments where you're going to be like, there's going to be a 24-yard run or pass, a deep, and it's going to be a holding call. You know what I mean? And those are going to be the growing pains. And then, like Chris said earlier, and Dion, the right side at tackle. We don't want to see McKivitz. We definitely don't want to see Jalen Moore there. Depending on what Mike McClinchy. Let me say this: if Mike McClinchy can play healthy, I am okay with those two vets on each side, and then we can kind of work with what's in the middle. But if Mike McClinchy's out or misses a lot because of that injury, then I'm not so comfortable with that offensive line. I know they brought in this other kid they got off of waivers because he's versatile. He's like Daniel Brunskill. They can move him around the line, which is good. But, I do like the fact that Daniel Brunskill, though, is a backup instead of a starter because they, one, his age. Second, you can put him in different spots if need be for a game or so. So I like that, and you're not punishing him so much on his body with every rep, every game, so he gets to be fresh. So I do like that. I like that Spencer stepped up and was able to do as good as he did. Because if he wouldn't have, I think Daniel Brunskill would have been a starter again. So kudos to Spencer. So let me thank you for that question. Let me go ahead and read another question real quick. Give me 1 second.
There's one further.
I got you. There's one from Shifty. The Shifty 49ers. Yeah, he says, who was your most surprising player to make the team? Also, most surprising cut. So, Polo, I think you wanted to handle that one, and I'm glad to hand that one off.
Yeah, so for me, the most surprising to make the team, and it's funny because Beto just mentioned it, it was the fact that both Colton McKivitz and Jalen Moore made it. because I knew they're gonna do something. They have to go get another offensive lineman. They were calling for offensive lineman. I was surprised after the Houston game that both of them made it. I thought at least one of them was gonna get cut, so I was really surprised to see both of them there. And for the most surprising cut, we talked about it a little bit earlier. I thought it was Kamoko Ture. Luckily, he's back on the practice squad. I have no idea why he would do that. I mean, the dude could get a job somewhere else, so that's why I think they prearranged something. I don't expect him to be there forever. I think that maybe they did that if he is really going to stay there. I think Kerry Hyder they're going to use inside, and I think they really like Drake Jackson. And I think that they kind of want to get him involved. And if you put Kerry Hyder, if you want to use Kerry Hyder inside from time to time, you can also expand the roles for Ebukam, Charles Omenihu, and Drake Jackson. Because Drake Jackson just, I know he's raw, but when we watch him play, he's just relentless. He's everywhere. Like the dude in the Packers game, the preseason game, he was on his knees on the ground. Jordan Love scrambles to the left. This dude stands up and chases down Jordan Love to make the tackle. Like, this dude is everywhere. He forced the errant throw that ended up getting intercepted in the Vikings game. I think that activity on the defensive line, the idea of having that on the other side of Bosa from time to time, just that raw athleticism, I think they really like that. So I think maybe that's why Teray got bumped down, just because other guys are maybe a little more versatile than him and going, on the interior. So that to me was still surprising, though, because edge rushers don't grow on trees. And Kerry Hyder is also like 4 years older than him. So that to me was a little surprising.
Quick.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Really quick there. I'm going to tell you my comp for Drake Jackson. You guys are going to like this.
I know what you're going to say.
Dwight Freeney.
Ooh, the old Colts guy.
Y'all remember Freeney. Freeney was not a very tall guy, but he had the nastiest bend and flex you've ever seen in your life. He could get around that edge really quickly. And I feel like now that they put Jackson back in his natural position, which is defensive end, once he continues to work with Kassir throughout the year, you will see his playing time increase along with the numbers. I'm telling you right now, this dude, he had Nick Bosa stumped. Bosa literally said, he's doing stuff I have no business doing. So if you got Nick Bosa, who's the premier edge rusher in this league, amazed at what you can do, you have no ceiling. Your ceiling is ridiculously high. But
that's a good question. Let me bring another question from Robert Davis. He says, "Do the Niners have enough talent on the O-line to cobble together a decent line?" We kind of answered that one already. I think that's one you read, right?
Put it back in.
We can combine Edward and Tony's, because Edward's asking prediction for the amount of wins they get, and they both ask if they'll win the division. So we kind of combine that.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, Beto, talk to him. Tell him what you think first, man.
No, your guys is my guest, man. I love to be humble. Let my guests do the talking. They hear me all the time, rant all the time anyway. So, I know Chris gets into your head, Dion. So I'm gonna let you go first on this one, because we don't want Chris getting in your head on this one. So go ahead and answer this question, and then we'll have Chris.
Yeah, I don't need him stealing my thunder, so to speak. It's all good. Chris will do that anytime, man. That's my dog. Me personally, I honestly say that we win about 13 to 14 games. And the reason that I state that is because looking at the schedule, they're very winnable games. Also, the number one thing that, if you paid attention to Kyle all offseason, the number one thing he was stating when he finally decided to declare Trey the leader and the unquestioned starter was the fact that, hey, Jimmy was super limited when he came here. But we put people around him. We made sure the defense was solid. We did things to insulate him in his progression. We're doing the same thing for Trey. We're not going to let this kid fall flat on his face. We've got a stout defense. We implemented moves to make our special teams better. So they're giving the kid every chance to succeed versus fail. And the beauty of it is, with Trey Lance is not your average African-American quarterback. And what I mean by that is, they always look at us as athletic. They look at us as, oh, he's going to run before he passes. Trey's the opposite. He's looking to throw before he runs. He doesn't want to run. People were stunned when he came out and said that after that slide, that was the first slide he ever did in his life.
Yep.
I don't believe it. Because if you watch any highlight from NDSU, he's just running over cats. So I say about 13 to 14 wins. 14 wins if we're lucky. 13 is my floor, but 14 is the ceiling. The AFC West is going to be a monster because every quarterback in that division is elite. So it's going to be a little frustrating, but I say 13 to 14 wins. And yes, we can definitely win the division because it's really hard to get back to the Super Bowl. And I can tell you right now, Von Miller is 10 times better, than
Floyd?
kid from Seattle that they signed, Bobby Wagner.
Oh, Bobby Wagner. Yeah.
Wagner was 10 times better than Bobby Wagner, so I doubt that he's going to make an impact. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I'm more conservative with the amount of wins, just because 13 wins to me is like it's just extremely hard to do, and I think they have a way harder schedule than last year. Last year we had a really nice like second half of the season. It was really in our favor, and we play the whole AFC West this year. So I see the ceiling for me as 13. I'm really expecting anywhere between like 11 or 12. I do think that can win the division though, because the Cardinals, when DeAndre Hopkins is not out there and he's going to be gone for the first 6 games, that is a different offense. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury is really that type of coach where he's a mastermind that can really scheme anything he wants. They're really different when D-Hop is not out there. So combining that, if you look at their first 3 games of the season, they could easily start 0-3 in Arizona. They've got, in no order, I don't remember the exact order, but the first 3 games they have, it's the Rams, the Chiefs, and the Raiders. So they could easily lose all those 3 games if everything goes wrong, because those are some pretty stacked teams they're playing. There's some good quarterbacks. And obviously the Seahawks, like that was 2 losses last year that should not be 2 losses this year. If we lose a game to the Seahawks, we have bigger problems, because that's Geno Smith over there. And when I'm looking at the Rams, to me, the favorites in the NFC are 3 teams. To me, it comes down to Tampa Bay, the Rams, and the Niners. Those are the 3 teams to me that I think get out. But when I look at the Rams, in all honesty, yeah, they got Allen Robinson. I think it's a really good pickup. I think he just hasn't really had a good quarterback and good system really his whole career. I know they got Bobby Wagner, but he is slowing down. To me, losing Von Miller, losing Odell, they lost multiple other players like Darius Williams, Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Corbett. I think they had some offensive line injuries already in camp. Losing those types of guys, I feel like as a net gain or loss, I feel like they kind of lost a little bit. Whereas the Niners, we got to see what they were like in the playoffs last year. You had a number 1 corner. That takes even more pressure off the safeties, so it's not like Hufanga needs to go out there and be a Pro Bowler when you have the defensive line you have with more depth now. Kinlaw's out there, like I was saying. The best linebacking core. You have 2 shutdown corners, or maybe Emmanuel Moses not shut down, but in my opinion, Javarius Ward, in my opinion, is pretty shut down and press man cover corner, so it's not going to play in that soft zone on guys like Cooper Kupp anymore on those 3rd and shorts, because now they have guys that get more up in your face. I know Trey's really inexperienced and he's not proven yet, but I want to make this point here. Let's go to the Green Bay playoff game, right? It was really nasty and physical, and it was not a lot of offense, right? Think of Trey Lance in that game. Like, just think if it was Trey in that game. The defense of the Packers would have had to respect the mobility and the arm strength that they didn't have to do when Jimmy's out there. The Rams, what do they do when we play the Rams in the playoff game? They say, I don't care what they say they're going to do or what, they're going to run the ball. Load up the box, force Jimmy to throw outside the numbers and down the field. We're going to win this game, and it worked, and they won by 3 points. You can't do that with Trey, regardless of how unproven he is. You know he's mobile, so you have to take that into account. You have to respect that, and we've already seen he's better at throwing the ball down the field. You have to kind of count the preseason reps to do this, but if you go back to last preseason, Trey is completing passes with 30-plus air yards, like triple or quadruple the rate that Jimmy G has since last preseason. It's like 300 less attempts or something like that. he's got 3 more. Like, imagine this dude out there for a full season with Brandon Ayuk and Danny Gray going down the field and Debo being able to be used as a vertical threat. We saw him take the shot in Houston. People were getting on him for it. I don't really understand why. It was an uncalled pass interference. There's a lot more elements that Kyle Shanahan can use in this offense. So I think with that improvement on both ends of the ball, I think that they squeak out of the division. I do think it's really close. I think it's going to come down to like similar to 2019, how it was like that last week. They're not going to be playing each other late in the year, which I don't get why. I feel like if I was the NFL, I would have wanted the late season drama, but I think we're just going to be looking at their records, and I think we're going to get to like week 16, 17, wondering like who's going to win the division. I think it'll be that close, but I see about 12.
That's a good answer. Yeah. People are, the Rams. Rudy, I don't know if Rudy's still in here. Probably not. There's only so much you can take of 49er talk, but. I think Ram fans, because they won that game in the NFC Championship, are really like, we got the Niners number now. It's like we beaten them 6 out of 1, 6 out of 7, excuse me, and the Niners lost by 3 points, and there were one drop by Tart away of winning the game. So and people say, well, it's now Trey Lance. Like, well, we beat the Rams with Mullins. You know what I mean? So. Trey's, way better than any of that. So, our division, the Cardinals are going to be one that I'm kind of glad. I know that Hopkins is not playing for the first 6 games, and we're getting the Cardinals when he comes back to the lineup, because we're getting the Cardinals towards the end. But the Cardinals have a tendency, maybe an exception this year because of Hopkins not being in the lineup, they start winning games in the beginning of the season, and then as Murray starts getting hit and bumped, and they start losing games towards the end, they fizzle out. So maybe we're getting the Cardinals at a good time of the season where we can, beat them. And then the Seattle, they're a mess. They're not going to do anything. So the Niners have a very good chance of winning this division, absolutely taking it away from the Rams. I am confident in that. And like you said, the Bucks. What other team did you mention, Chris? I know you said Bucks, Niners, and
Rams.
And the Rams, okay. Yeah, because I don't think Minnesota might creep in a little bit in there, but I don't think it will be the Packers as much as people think it is. I mean, losing all those studs and, or not all studs, but losing Davante Adams and a few other receivers, it's going to hurt. And Aaron Rodgers, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have that 2018 type of season more than he had at the 2021 season. So I'm excited about that, guys. So I think we can definitely win 13 games. I say worst case scenario 10. This roster is just too stacked up not to be able to win games. And I know people are so concerned about Trey this and Trey that, but I mean, Kyle Shanahan plans out so well, schemes so well to help his quarterback out. And when you have a running game like we do, and we have a defense like we do, and now special teams, that is all beneficial to Trey Lance's development. Before we start ending this show, and I appreciate all those that asked the question, I want to ask you guys for the last segment as we end the show is, why do you guys think that the Niners held on to Trey Sermon on Tuesday just to let him go? And now I understand why they let him go on Wednesday, to make room for the offensive lineman, but the fact that they chose him out of all the players, why do you think they held on to him on Tuesday just to let him go on Wednesday and not hold on to someone like maybe Hasty?
Because he was a third-round pick. That's just my thought process on it. Honestly, it's just because he was a third-round pick.
And I hate that.
I kind of feel.
But you're right. You're absolutely. You still with us, Dion? Who?
I feel this weren't so hold on him, and they were like, you know what? What'd you say?
We lost you for a second there. You kind of sounded like a little bit like a robot.
Can you hear me?
Now you're good. You're good now.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just saying that yeah, basically they're just feeling like they had to hold on to him because he was a third round pick. They gave him that, and basically they knew they were going to let him go. For me, to be honest with you, uh, I think that they knew they were going to cut him. They just figured, hey, he's a third round pick. We want to save a little bit of face, and that's it. Corey did ask me how long I've been a Niner fan, and that's since 1985, man. First time I ever seen Jerry Rice and Joe Montana connect. I was sold at that point. I know Jerry didn't have the greatest rookie season ever, but when I was a kid, I didn't, my mom was the one to teach me sports and whatnot, so she just told me to pick colors. So I saw the 49ers playing a game. I saw the red team. Red is my favorite color, and when I saw that touchdown pass from Montana to Rice, I was hooked, and I've never changed since. I don't follow, like, I have friends that are, fans of other teams, but I never make bets with them on, I'll wear your team's jersey if we lose this game. I never do that. You just don't catch me putting other teams' paraphernalia on my body.
Hell no.
That is probably the number one thing that I am opposed to, just because even when I see entertainers go to cities, exactly what he's doing. I see entertainers go to other cities and they put on the jersey for that city. It's like, look, bro, I'm already here to entertain you. I don't need to, miss to your team like that. It's all good. If you leave it up to me, if I was an entertainer, I'd walk out in a Niner jersey everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So
it's who you are, yeah.
Yeah, it's who I am. It's been since '85, and then I did see that. I think Niner Game 4-8 had asked me how I was feeling because I basically went on a rant on Instagram, and I was not a happy camper. If you want to know what the mood is, man, for me the mood is he's here. I got to deal with him. I don't want to, but it is what it is. I just honestly, my number one thing, please focus on the team. Don't run up to the podium and go, hey, you guys just blew a team out 42-10, but how do you feel about Jimmy? Yeah, no, we don't. I'm sorry. And the players have to help that along. Like, they have to be able to say, look, he's here, we get it, but I'm going to tell you right now, this is not like, I'm not about to do that. And if the players do that, then that will help them, help the media understand, like, oh, man, we're trying to get questions about football, not about the backup, but that's just me. It is what it is.
Right on. Well, go ahead, Chris.
With the Trey Sermon thing, it is partly, he was a third-round pick, and I think they were being a little stubborn with it to this aspect, Obviously, if they wanted him gone, they would have just traded him to Philadelphia since they were calling about him. They waived him because they wanted him to clear a waiver to stay on the practice squad, which I do understand because he is 23. I don't understand. I don't know exactly what their deeper insurance policy is if injuries happen in that running back room, which they're going to happen. I think the reason you saw them wait a day, I think they wanted teams to start putting in their waiver claims and picking up other players before they just immediately let Trey Sermon hit the waiver wire. And it was still a stupid decision because obviously if you're getting calls about a trade, he's going to get picked up anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, with the Eagles. What it was.
I think they were holding out hope. It was that stubbornness, like I was saying before. They were holding out hope he would clear waivers and end up on their practice squad in case they need him. Because I'm not going to lie to you. If Trey Sermon was good, if he went to the practice squad and turned himself around this next year and was good next year, look at the core running backs they'd have at a good young age with Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason, TDP, and Sermon. That would have been great if he turned around next year and they got to keep him. But I think that's why you saw them wait today, is because they were holding out hope that they could get away with that, and it just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think if TDP really plays and balls out this year and shows that he is worthy of the third-round pick this year, we can tend to forget Trey Sermon a little bit easier. We already know what we're getting out of Jordan Mason. But you're right. I think they cut them on Wednesday. No, hopefully that every roster out there already had their picks already in, and they don't get by. But like you said, the Niners and Eagles were just in discussions the week ago for Trey Sermon. Why wouldn't they pick him up, in the waiver wire? So, as I conclude, gentlemen, I love to give my guests always a free gift for being on my show. I got 3 patches. I got this one right here. I got this one right here, this color, and the red and white. I'm gonna give you guys one. You guys one of each, so you can pick one.
Okay.
What color, and then I'll mail it to you. You can pick this one. You can pick this one, or the gold one. And
I'll take that
afterward,
red and white one.
which one?
That red and white one. That
The
red
red-
and white one looks hard. I like
Yeah,
that.
the red and white.
Yeah, that was dope.
So both of you guys want with this one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
No, that's my way of saying. Or you guys can get one of these if you want.
Nah, I'm gonna stick with the red and white. I like
All
the
right.
red game.
I got
red
plenty
and
of
white
all
is
of-
good, man.
Hard,
So-
man.
So do me a favor, guys. We'll talk, don't go anywhere when I end the show. Stay with me for a second or two so I can get your information. Everyone that watched the show and hanging out with the Niner Sickness podcast tonight, and my 2 guests, Dion and Chris, we appreciate you guys. Thank you again for watching my show and being supportive to the Niner Sickness. Everybody knows that my show is I'm not the most popular guy. There's so many great content creators out there that I love to watch. I have the gift of gab. I love to talk. My wife says, go talk to somebody else because I can't stand you talking football to me. So, we got a bigger house with a bigger room. She goes, here's your own office. Put all your stuff in there and get away from me. So this is what I do. So I come on here and talk to you guys about football. So everyone watching, thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you guys. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful night. And we'll see you on the next podcast. Peace.